Welcome to For Better or For Court, Family Law in New Jersey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of For Better or For Court, Family Law in New Jersey with Alix Claps. I'm your host, Mike Leon. Alix here is a partner over at Heyman and Fletcher, and she's a certified matrimony law attorney with years of experience guiding clients through divorce, custody, and complex family law matters across New Jersey. In today's episode, we're talking about what happens after divorce papers are signed. Look, many people think the final judgment is the final judgment, right? The finish line. But in reality, life after divorce often brings new legal and practical questions. Alix, it's so good to see you as always. A common misconception in this is always that a final judgment signifies the end of all the disputes. But in your experience, do issues still come up after judgment?
Hi, Mike. It's good to see you. Yes, issues still come up after judgment, and there's the issues that we know that we have to address, and then there's sometimes the issues that nobody anticipates that we have to deal with at some point.
So, Alix, what are some post-divorce challenges that clients often face in that first year after judgment?
Everyone goes in on the day that they get divorced, and there's always this big, huge amount of relief. All the weight's off their shoulders. They've got that piece of paper. It tells them they don't have to fight with their ex-spouse anymore. But then there's all the mundane stuff that people don't want to do because it's annoying and it's hard. Like maybe you have to sell the marital residence. Maybe somebody has to refinance and you have to do all that paperwork. Maybe you have to just get each other off of your cell phone plan. You have to do a qualified domestic relations order to effectuate the distribution of the retirement assets. You agreed on it in your settlement. You know it's got to be done, but then you have to go through the actual legwork to do it. And people let those things lie. They let those things, hang around. That kind of thing is put it on the side table and you don't want to deal with it. But if you wait too long, you can create a whole bunch of problems for yourself.
Yeah. Let's dive into the weeds on some of that, because what does the court do? Let's say if an ex-spouse fails to comply with the court orders. Now it's final. They're failing to comply with the court orders, whether it be paying support, transferring property, like you just mentioned. What does the court do in those cases?
In New Jersey, we have what we call probation. It's I think it's technically called New Jersey Child Support, but it's an organization. It's part of the court system, and it handles custody, child support, and spousal support orders. So if you had in your agreement that alimony was going to be paid directly on the first of the month, the payor is going to deposit money into the payee's bank account, and that stops happening, you can go to the court and say, look, I want it to be paid through wage garnishment. I want probation to be the one tracking that these monthly payments are getting made so I don't have to chase after my ex anymore. So that's one option. Another option, there's what we call a motion to enforce litigants' rights. So if part of the agreement was the house would be refinanced within 6 months and the spouse who's supposed to be doing that hasn't taken any action, the other spouse can file a motion, and maybe there's a provision that if it isn't refinanced within 6 months, the house gets sold. Maybe there's no such provision, and you have to go in and you say, you know what, Judge, I want limited power of attorney so I can do the refinance on behalf of my ex-spouse to get my name off of this house.
So in a previous episode, we were talking a little bit about co-parenting. In the judgment is now final scenario, again, what options do parents have if the co-parenting conflicts come up after the divorce is final?
And there are always going to be co-parenting conflicts to a certain degree. I mean, parenting is hard. Children are hard. Agreeing with what the best course of action is doesn't mean either one of you is a bad parent, but it's hard to decide what the right thing to do is. So there are a couple of options. You can go to mediation with an attorney or a mediator if you have to reach a new sort of agreement, if you need to restructure things. If you're looking for help with more day-to-day decisions and you guys just can't reach an agreement, you can use a co-parenting coach, or you can use what we call a parent coordinator in New Jersey, which is a specially qualified, sometimes it's a lawyer, sometimes it's a social worker or somebody with a background in mental health training and social work training, who will give you written recommendations on discrete issues. And sometimes those are individuals that are court appointed, and sometimes parents go out and identify them by themselves.
Alix, we know life changes, circumstance changes. Let's talk a little bit about child custody support agreements. Can these be modified shortly after the divorce, or does the court usually require more time to pass after it's been final?
I think if you're going in the week after your divorce and you're seeking a change, the court's going to look at you a little funny. Like, what can have happened in that short amount of time? Now, if there's a big issue. I can't even imagine what would be such a big issue that would need to be addressed that quickly, but it could happen. If there is a huge change of circumstance, undeniable, unforeseen, that's one thing. If the week after the divorce, one parent loses their job unexpectedly, you don't run in and seek a modification immediately, because you have to give the court time to see that, all right, I'm trying to find a new job. I'm trying to fix this. I'm not sandbagging. I didn't, lose my job in air quotes. I actually lost it. This is a temporary situation, sure, but it's a situation that means I can't currently afford my child support obligation and I need some relief for now. But you got to give that time to build, usually 90 days, sometimes longer. It depends on if you can demonstrate proof of an attempt to find a new job.
Alex, you were mentioning before about people putting things off. I want to dive into that a little bit more. What happens with joint debts, whether it be shared assets? Maybe they weren't fully resolved during the divorce. What happens in those scenarios?
Well, if you've got an agreement whereby you guys are sharing joint marital debt and one person is paying their portion and the other person isn't, then you get into creditors calling and seeking relief from the spouse who isn't supposed to be responsible for any of that anymore. So you may need to go to court and seek enforcement. You may need to have a conversation with a bankruptcy attorney or somebody who is equipped to deal with it in a more a broader sense and outside of the family court. The family court can't solve all of your issues. So it may be that, look, you guys reached an agreement, it wasn't a viable solution, so you have to try something else.
Piggybacking on that, I'm sure there are some other things that are overlooked once the divorce is final and legal, like tax, insurance, maybe estate planning issues. Have you noticed those in your experience, that those are some of the things that get overlooked? Or what are some other things that get overlooked after the divorce has been final?
It's definitely important that if you have life insurance provisions, it's not unusual if there's a spousal or a child support obligation in a divorce agreement, you have an obligation to name the beneficiary of a life insurance policy the other party. Even though you're divorced, you have to name them, sometimes as trustee for the children, sometimes as, if it's insuring an alimony obligation, you just have to name that person for a certain amount of time until the alimony obligation is gone. So make sure you're doing the things that are set forth in your settlement agreement. Other things like changing the beneficiaries in your will, you're going to have that right after your divorce. But if you don't remember to do that, you may end up inadvertently leaving your estate to somebody that you're now divorced from. And that not only, maybe there's somebody contest that, maybe that person gets a windfall, but you don't want to leave litigation behind for the people that you would like to have your estate when you're gone.
Yeah. Great points there. So if someone right now is listening to this, they feel anxious about facing their ex in court again. They just did it. Now they got to face them again. What are some alternatives out there that exist for them to resolve these disputes without actually going back before a judge?
Going back to a mediator is a great solution. It could be the same mediator you used during your divorce. It could be somebody with fresh eyes. That's all good. You bring your divorce agreement, you say, here's what we agreed to, and here's what's not working about it. What can we do to make this better? It could also be there are co-parenting therapists. There are, if that's where your issues lie, if it's decisions about your children. I haven't utilized, I don't think I've seen it utilized post-judgment, but there's really no reason why it couldn't be, utilizing a financial planner to deal with issues that were joint. Like we've sent divorcing couples, I and my adversary, to consult with a tax attorney to figure out what is the best global solution for this joint marital tax debt and how then we can incorporate that recommendation into the final judgment of divorce. There's no reason why you can't necessarily approach that the other way. Maybe there's a tax debt you didn't even know existed that was from the marriage, and you guys have to kind of get together and meet with a tax professional or tax attorney after the fact to fix it together.
Alex, finally, in closing here, what advice would you give to someone? They're starting this post-divorce life. They want to avoid future legal problems. What's a piece of advice you would give to them?
Part of it is in the last stages of settling your divorce. I know it's hard. I know it's time consuming. I know it's emotionally draining. Try not to say things in your divorce agreement like, we'll agree about this later. It can be, you can assume, even if it's extremely amicable, don't say, we know this is an issue, but we're going to agree about it later on. And not every issue can be foreseen. I'm not saying you can when your child's 5, you can figure out what decisions you're going to make about college, but put in your process for when the time comes, this is how we're going to approach it. So you can avoid problems that might come up, because problems will come up. Some of them are foreseeable, and if you can address the ones that are foreseeable, at least through a mechanism that you can agree upon, in the time, it saves you a lot of effort and money down the line.
Alix, thank you so much for the time and insights on this. We truly appreciate it, as always.
Thank you, Mike. Good to see you.
And thank you to everybody out there for listening to another installment of For Better or For Court Family Law in the state of New Jersey. If you're facing right now challenges after your divorce is final, Alix can help you enforce those rights and create a plan for that next stage of your life. Do me a favor, visit HeymanFletcherLaw.com to schedule a consultation today. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a review and comment, or share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.